Hello and welcome back to the Eyes of O Gaming channel. Thank you for joining me as we look at yet another game in the What Is It and Is It Worth It game review series. As always, we will be looking at the game in as story spoiler free way as possible, and I'll do my best to present the game objectively. What do I mean by objectively? Well, simply put, video games, as with nearly any form of art or entertainment, is a subjective and personal experience. It's basically impossible to numerically measure any part of the game, and so assigning a number value as a rating is completely arbitrary and, well, pointless. Because of that, we aren't going to do that in this video. Instead, I'll try to present what the game is and the experience you can expect, so you can make your own conclusion on if it's worth it for you. At the end of the video, I will give my own opinion if I enjoyed it, and if I would recommend it, or at least which gamers I think might enjoy the title. What is best in life?
To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women.
Well, there you have it. Today we're looking at Conan, the game released back in 2007, being developed by Nihilistic Software and published by THQ. So what is Conan? How has it held up over all these years? Let's take a look at this one as a first-time player, while staying as objective and spoiler-free as possible, and go over the various aspects so we can attempt to answer the most important question asked in this video game review series. Is this one worth it for you? Sit back, relax, and let's get into it. Unsurprisingly, in Conan, you take on the role of Conan. Your overall objective is to recover Conan's lost armor while taking on a wizard. This really feels like the most stereotypical Robert E. Howard Conan story stuff. The world the game takes place in is Hyboria, which is the fantasy land created by Howard for the stories that Conan takes place in. For any unfamiliar with Howard, he is the author of the original Conan stories. Hyboria is a fantastical version of Howard's version of Earth, but taking place in around the year 10,000 BC. The various people and civilizations are all loosely based on historical civilizations, but from various different time periods and found all over the world, then mashed together in a fictional retelling of prehistoric events. The particular story that was the inspiration for this game is called Queen of the Black Coast, and is one of Howard's short stories in the series. So what kind of mechanics can you expect in this one? Well, it's a third-person hack-and-slash adventure game. This one is firmly on the rails, though with some very limited exploration of level zones. Typically just finding hidden spots which contain a few extra rewards. Combat and movement will feel rather clunky in this game, and I feel this is mostly due to the game showing its age at this point. Aside from some general clunkiness, the combat is further frustrating in the early stages as it feels like you don't have much in the way of combat capabilities. As you progress through the game, however, you will gain experience which can be used to purchase additional abilities. With these unlocks, the combat will feel more and more fluid, and I'm hard-pressed to say if this is a neat progression system as you go from being fairly useless to being able to put up a proper fight. Or if this somehow could have been implemented differently, as the beginning will just feel like the game is limited, as seemingly fundamental combat options are missing to begin with. Likely whether you appreciate or loathe this will be dependent on the individual player. The game is definitely showing its age. It's not at the point of being unplayable, and really I didn't mind the graphics at all, but they are definitely feeling dated. Aside from the obvious things like less detailed textures, this game also suffers from some of the typical issues of this time, such as hitboxes that are not always great, repetitious animations of enemies, and the greater potential of getting stuck in the environment than typical modern games. Even with those critiques, I would say overall, when you take into consideration the age of the game, there is still a decent amount that the game offers in this area. Enemies do look interesting, and NPCs are not too bad at all. Environments are varied enough to stay interesting, and other than the couple of issues I mentioned, I didn't experience any game-breaking bugs or glitches. A neat feature built into the game is the ability to pick up and use enemy weapons. As I mentioned earlier, getting experience allows you to purchase upgrades and new abilities. When you start a level, you begin with your default sword. However, some of the abilities you purchase will be specific to two-handed weapons or dual-wielding weapons, for example. In order to use these abilities, you'll be required to first kill an enemy and then pick up their weapons. I felt like this was a neat feature and offered some uniqueness to the game. Another interesting aspect is that your overall quest is to recover your lost armor. As you progress through the main campaign and begin collecting different pieces, you do get a visual representation of Conan becoming more powerful as he dons these recovered elements of his armor, and adds to your feeling of building up and becoming stronger before facing down the final boss. Speaking of boss fights, one thing worth mentioning is that there does seem to be a rather large difficulty discrepancy between the majority of the game and boss fights. Boss fights are not impossibly difficult, and I could usually beat them with just a couple of attempts. However, they do require some pretty good timing on the part of the player and memorizing specific boss attacks in order to be successful. Again, they aren't impossibly hard, but depending on player skill, it will either be a stiff challenge or frustratingly difficult when compared to the standard levels within the game. Sound is actually pretty good. The dialogue is written mostly to the level of what you would expect in a Conan game. With that in mind, you can probably guess the dialogue and story is not going to be super deep. It's a Conan game. Kill the bad guys, save the maidens, and take back what's yours. That's about it. Music and effects all sound reasonable for the age and the situation, and a pleasant surprise was the voice acting in the game, with Conan being voiced by a perfect choice of Ron Perlman, and Akana voiced by Claudia Black.
Stay where you are. That should end your miserable life.
It was here that Conan met the warrior queen, Akana.
Stop, or you'll die where you stand.
I'll do as I please, woman.
Under whose flag do you sail?
I am Conan. I serve no man.
So what can I compare this game to? Well, it is a very linear action-adventure third-person game, definitely fitting the mold of a more classical style as compared to the transmutated style of modern games. I would have to say God of War is a possible comparison, though Conan feels like a much more simplified version of this style of game. Everything from mechanics to world building to storyline. It may be similar, but it's just been simplified. Another potential comparison, and a game that I have previously covered on the channel, is Darksiders. Again, not exact, and Darksiders has much more complex systems going on, but just to give you an idea. It will follow a specific path. You fight through zones taking out standard and more challenging enemies, and eventually you come to climactic boss fights at the end of stages. Everything being packaged in the third-person hacking and slashing action-adventure wrapping. So now that we've looked at some of the features of the game, we reach the point of my review where I give a more subjective look at my personal experience with it. Please keep in mind that the following is just my opinion of the game, and if the features and genre seem interesting to you, you should definitely check it out for yourself, as not all games are for all gamers. The game that you hate might be the next gamer's all-time favorite, which is one of the things that I love about gaming. There's always something for someone out there. Did I enjoy this game, and do I recommend it? Oh boy. Well, I would say if you're looking for a classic action-adventure game, there are probably many other options out there that are going to far surpass this one in just about every objective metric you can do a side-by-side comparison on. That said, it is a very simple game. It's easy to pick up and put down. If you're someone who plays within a schedule, for instance if you have many other demands on your time and want something that is easy to pick up, play through a stage, and turn off and go back to real life, then maybe this can be a good one. Otherwise, unless you're a huge Conan fan, you may not find much value in revisiting this one. Personally, Conan is a huge guilty pleasure of mine, and so being able to play a game set within Howard's world, especially one that felt true to the original stories, I did get a fair amount of enjoyment with this one. So even though I personally enjoyed it and I could see it having some limited appeal, unless you're a true Conan fan, I wouldn't really recommend this one to go back to, as there's just so many options out there that will feel superior. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this look at Conan. Have you already played through this one? What were your own thoughts on the game? Did you agree or disagree with my own assessment of it? If you disagreed, let me know why. Maybe there's something I didn't think of and you can convince me. I'd love to hear about your own experiences down in the comments, or if my review showcase was helpful, I'd like to know if you decided to go ahead with it or not. Either way, if you found this video interesting or entertaining, please let me know with a thumbs up, and also consider subscribing to the channel. I make and upload a variety of gaming content, not just reviews like this, but also walkthroughs, mod showcases, let's play, and more, and I'd love to have you join the community and help direct the future of the channel. Otherwise, thank you so much for taking the time to watch today, and until next time, take care.